seances, Ouija boards, ectoplasm. Oh my, I must be talking about spiritualism. Lately, I've noticed a lot of media that deals with the topic of spiritualism in some way. I suppose that makes sense because we are in the month of October. But I have noticed a little bit of a trend with the way the media deals with spiritualism. First, there are two ends of the spectrum in which the topic seems to be covered. One is that it was just a world of con artists, and the other is that it's absolute definite proof of an afterlife. But both of these ends of the spectrum also seem to discuss spiritualism as something that just existed in the past. So today, I just wanted to share a really brief introduction into spiritualism. Hi, welcome to Gently Being. Spiritualism is a religious movement. It's an ongoing religious movement. Currently, there are spiritualist churches you can find around the world. I think it's important to acknowledge and discuss the fact that spiritualism is an ongoing movement, an ongoing religious movement, and that there are many people around the world who are now a part of a spiritualist church. It's not just something that existed in the past. Spiritualism's basic tenets are the belief in a divine creator of all, unity and equality of all, that we can communicate with spirits and angels, the soul continues to exist after death, that we hold a personal responsibility to the reality that we are living, and we show this personal responsibility through our words, thoughts, and actions. And that every soul can progress or advance in ways of love and wisdom while they are in this material world and in the next. It's important to remember, like in all religious movements, there are various interpretations of those basic tenets. Different emphasis is put on different statements for different individuals. And if you're curious, you may want to Google and see if there's a spiritualist church in your area and see how they state the tenets, because sometimes the wording is different and some of the tenets are there and some aren't, depending on the church. Now it's time for some history. On March 31st, 1848, two sisters who lived in Hydesville, New York, heard spirits rapping in their house. Rapping is basically hearing a tapping or knocking within the house, but there's nothing that you can see that could have done it, nothing of material form that's doing the rapping or knocking. Maggie and Katie Fox shared this news of hearing the rapping with their family, and then their family began to share the news that their daughters could communicate with spirits to their neighbors and friends. At first, this interest really did remain within the local community, and friends and neighbors would come to witness the phenomena. But word and interest spread, and on November 14, 1849, the Fox sisters did their very first public demonstration for a paying public audience. The story of the Fox sisters is a fascinating and tragic one. To make a very long story short, the sisters were very unhappily managed by their elder sister, Leah. In the beginning, the two younger Fox sisters, Maggie and Kate, said that they heard spirits, and this then progressed to them being able to communicate with them. After the Fox sisters' initial demonstration, there continued to be a rise in interest in the idea of being able to communicate with spirits and an interest in those who claimed that they could. I think it's really important to note here that while there are some mediums of the time who became infamous for their abilities and also for then being debunked, and also, let's be honest, infamous because they would hold more public seances or public displays of their abilities, there were also many individuals who would communicate with the spirit world for just their friends and neighbors, just their local community, and weren't necessarily charging the public at all. Spiritualism continued to rise in popularity in the years following the Fox sisters' demonstration. Spiritualist societies were formed, and beliefs began to become more formalized. During these years, many women came to the forefront of the movement. While spiritualism itself was a branch that grew from Christian traditions, it has a loose connection to both Quakerism and Shakerism in particular. It was a movement that was abandoning the patriarchal structure of most churches of that time. Within the broader frame of the spiritualist community, members worked to advocate for women's rights and became part of the abolitionist movement. For some people, spiritualism provided them with a voice that they did not have in the wider social sphere of the time. I think for many people, when they think of spiritualism, vintage photos of mediums come to mind. Mediumship is developing the ability to communicate with the spirit world. Some of the forms of mediumship that developed were trance mediums, spirit writing, material mediums, direct voice mediums, and telepathic mediums. Spiritualism became popular in the northern United States during and after the Civil War. Many families were left devastated by the loss of their loved ones and turned to mediums to try to contact those that were lost in the war. Spiritualism also saw a strong resurgence in interest during World War I. During this time, while there was a rise in interest in spiritualism, there also became a real strong rise in those that wanted to debunk spiritualism, wanted to debunk mediums. You have figures like Harry Houdini, who really took it on as a mission to, lift the veil on the magic that some of these mediums were doing. So Harry Houdini himself would often share the way that mediums were able to do some of the so-called tricks that they were doing at the time. In general, there was a rise in skepticism. And of course, this continues on to today. So bringing us back to the present moment, that was just a little bit of a brief introduction into spiritualism. I personally find that you don't necessarily have to live on either end of the spectrum of just being a total skeptic, cynic of the movement, or seeing it necessarily as absolute confirmation of that afterlife. You can live in the middle and see how you feel about the spiritual world around you. And if you have interest, you can always look to see if there's a spiritualist church within your community or area and maybe visit it, or just check out its website and see what it has to say. And hey, you can always try to commune or contact with the spirit world yourself and see what happens and see what you believe in. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe down below for more spiritful living videos and to follow along with Hollow Mass Advent, and hit the bell notification so you always know when there's a new video. Thanks so much for spending time with Gently Being.